Welcome back to my channel. The legend has returned, but not in the way anyone expected. This was not a comeback to lace up the boots, not a surprise challenge, not a final match announced to shock the world. For the first time since Saturday night's main event, John Cena walked back into a WWE building simply as John Cena, a man at peace with what he is given and what he is closed. There was no entrance music echoing through the arena, no roar of the crowd washing over him, no camera lenses tracking his every move. This time, the moment was quieter, heavier, and somehow far more meaningful. And the very first person to meet him, to acknowledge his return with intention and respect, was the tribal chief himself, Roman Reigns. What unfolded next was not designed for television, not scripted for drama, but it may go down as one of the most important symbolic moments in modern WWE history. This is the story of two icons, a private room in Chicago, and a conversation that gently closed one era while firmly confirming another. This was not just a meeting, it was the real passing of the torch. Chicago was already buzzing long before Monday Night Raw went live. The Allstate Arena carried that familiar electricity, the kind that only comes when a wrestling city knows something important is in the air. Fans packed the building, production crews moved at full speed, and the entire show felt charged with anticipation. But while the WWE Universe focused on what would happen once the red lights came on, the most profound moment of the night happened hours earlier, far away from the noise and spectacle. Tucked away from the chaos of cables, monitors, and ringing headsets was a warmly lit conference room, calm and almost timeless in its atmosphere. Inside, a small and carefully chosen group had gathered. This was not a corporate strategy session or a creative meeting. This was something far more personal. It was a quiet celebration, a respectful farewell, and in many ways, a retirement party. WWE officials were present, along with longtime producers and a handful of trusted legends who had shared locker rooms, miles on the road, and decades of memories with the man at the center of it all. John Cena stood there not in jorts and wristbands, but in a sharp, tailored suit. He looked relaxed, grounded, and reflective, carrying himself with the calm confidence of someone who knows his legacy is secure. He laughed easily, exchanged stories, and took time to thank people individually, not as a character, but as a peer. There was a sense that this room was witnessing the final punctuation mark on a career that had defined an entire generation. Then the door opened. The conversation softened, and the energy shifted in a way that only happens when history walks into the room. Roman Reigns had arrived. His presence filled the doorway instantly, not because of arrogance or dominance, but because of what he represents. For over a decade, these two men had been bound together by comparison, by rivalry, and by the impossible weight of being the face of WWE in different eras. Their story was never built on hatred. It was built on competition, on respect, and on the pressure of expectation. They were often framed as opposites, yet they shared more in common than almost anyone else could understand. This meeting introduced a new dynamic, one neither man had ever navigated before. The rivalry was over. There was no next match, no rematch clause, no future chapter to build toward inside the ring. The question now was no longer who was better between the ropes. The real challenge was defining what their relationship would look like now that the competition was gone forever. How does the reigning, undisputed ruler of the present honor the man who carried the company through the past? How do two legendary opponents evolve into legendary equals, standing side by side instead of across from one another? The room felt like history was being rewritten in real time, delicate and intentional. As Roman stepped forward, the small crowd naturally parted, giving him a clear path toward Cena. There were no cheers, no applause, no dramatic reactions. Just a respectful silence, the kind that acknowledges the gravity of the moment. Roman extended his hand, and Cena took it without hesitation. What started as a handshake quickly turned into that familiar embrace they had shared after Saturday night's main event, backs being slapped in mutual acknowledgement. This time, though, the hug felt lighter, less burdened by finality, more rooted in understanding. Roman broke the moment with a genuine smile and a simple greeting, welcoming Cena back and joking about how well he cleaned up outside of ring gear. Cena laughed, returning the compliment, admitting that it felt strange to be standing on the other side of the curtain, not preparing for a match, but simply being present. As the gathering continued, conversations flowed naturally. Stories were shared, and laughter echoed softly around the room. Then a quieter moment emerged, one that felt instinctively important. Roman reached for 2 glasses, filled them, and handed one to Cena. He raised his own glass and spoke, his voice calm but commanding, effortlessly drawing the room's attention. Everyone turned toward the 2 men, the pillars of 2 different eras standing shoulder to shoulder. Roman admitted he was not someone who enjoyed making speeches, but some moments demanded words. He spoke about standards, about responsibility, and about the weight of carrying a company on your back when the world is watching. For 20 years, he said, John Cena set that standard. He defined what it meant to represent WWE, not just in championships, but in conduct, professionalism, and commitment. He talked about how respect is not something given lightly in this business, and how moments like this are how legends should be honored. Cena listened quietly, visibly moved but composed, absorbing the words not as praise, but as recognition from the one man who truly understood the cost of that role. This was not about nostalgia or sentimentality. This was about acknowledgement. The retired emperor of the past was being honored by the undisputed king of the present, not with grand theatrics, but with sincerity. It was the closing of a chapter that began years ago when Cena stood alone at the top, carrying expectations that felt impossible, and it was the affirmation of the present era, where Roman Reigns now stands in that same place, bearing the same weight. In that room, there was no past versus present, no debate about eras. There was only continuity, the understanding that WWE moves forward not by erasing what came before, but by respecting it. As the toast concluded, there was no eruption of noise, just quiet nods, subtle smiles, and a shared understanding that something rare had just occurred. This was closure, not just for Cena, but for the saga that linked these 2 men for so long. It was the final confirmation that the torch had not been dropped or taken. It had been passed willingly, with honor. Moments like this do not make it to television, but they shape the soul of the industry. They remind everyone that behind the characters and storylines are real people who carry real legacies. If this moment gave you a sense of closure to the Cena saga, then it did exactly what it was meant to do. Subscribe right now for more exclusive looks at the legacy-defining moments that happen behind the scenes. Hit like, share your thoughts in the comments on what this show of respect truly means, and stay ready.